सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ मूकं करोति ॐ समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं। हरिः ओं श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओं। हरिः ओं। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं परमानन्दमाधवं। हरि ओम। So one of the things about Bhagavad Gita is that throughout the one clear message which is given by Bhagavan to us is Ma Shucha, do not grieve. Right? And this journey into the Bhagavad Gita also begins with this first chapter that we are looking at right now, where the name of the chapter is what? Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Right? So this Arjuna Vishada, what is it speaking of? It is talking of that grief or that sorrow of Arjuna, which has brought him down to such a state that he has forgotten his very purpose of being a Kshatriya, the very purpose for which he had come prepared for this war. And now he is asking Bhagwan, what should I do? How should I go about? Right? And therefore, even when we see this, because it is said, how did Ved Vyas ji come upon the Bhagavad Gita, is that he wanted to give a clear instruction of how the Upanishadic messages are to be implied in our day-to-day lives, right? And here the adhikari or that student here is Arjuna, right? And it is Arjuna's nimitta by which we are all studying this, right? And what is the Upanishadic message as such is to know that truth about ourselves, such that when we are facing any situation, therefore, then there is no reason at all for us to have any tears in our eyes, for us to have any kind of conflict or agitation in our minds, right? So therefore, this Bhagavad Gita is also said to be the Ashoka Upanishad, that which will take us outside of any kind of shoka, any kind of sorrow, is this Upanishad. As a whole, Bhagavad Gita is that, right? And any of the chapters by itself are also going to give us that same message throughout. So that is something that I wanted to point out. Then one more thing is that if we see the first verse, it starts with Dharma. What is the first verse? Dharma kshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Mamakav Pandavaschaiva Kimakurvata Sanjaya. So here Dhritarashtra, though he very clearly knows as a king that this battle or any battle which has to take place, it should be for the sake of establishing dharma, right? And therefore, one might have thought that he should be well aware that there should not be any kind of adharmic karya happening. But he also is very much aware that it was his sons themselves going towards adharma that had led to this battle. Why even his sons? It was him himself who did not stop that adharma from happening, and therefore he too was as much responsible for this yuddha, as much responsible for this battle as anyone else, right? So anyway, but then the first chapter begins with dharma and the 18th chapter ends with mama. Okay, so when we combine the two, it is also said that this is that text, this Bhagavad Gita is that text which reminds me of my dharma, mama dharma, and how do I apply it in my life. So the entire Bhagavad Gita is a guide for my own unfoldment, right? It is that which will give me that kind of support or that kind of guidance or that kind of consultation whenever I require it in various ways, if I take its support, that is, if I refer to it, that is, if I day to day, every day study some part of it, right? And one more thing is that, if we look at Pujya Gurudev Swami Chinmayananji's Holy Gita book, right? If you look at the index itself, Gurudev has very beautifully catalogued it as to any of the problems that we might face or any of the questions or queries we might have in our mind, and he has given which verse, which chapter we can refer to. So it's a very comprehensive kind of a index, so ever you want to, you can also go through that. Now when we were seeing this, we saw the various stories behind. Last class we went from the initial verses, right? And we went up to the fourth to sixth verse, where Duryodhana is looking at the armed forces in front of him, that of the Pandavas, which is led by Drishtadyumna. And he is telling Dronacharyaji that, look, this is the formation of the army of the Pandavas, led by your own disciple, who is the son of Drupad. And that was, of course, intended to pinch him, kind of saying that, that same Drupad who seemed to be your friend but still is not your friend. And also, it is his son whom you are going to face in battle. His son who is your disciple. You are the one who taught him the art of warfare. Now see, he is your opponent's son. So therefore he is your opponent now. Had you had some kind of tact, then maybe you shouldn't have given him this, the lessons in war, or taught him something lesser than what you should have done. But you have given him all the tips and tricks, and now he is going to use them against you. Basically, this was the purport of what Duryodhana wanted Dronacharya to know, and therefore he was using very tactfully whatever words he was using. Okay, so 1 second, we'll just quickly go through the verses so that we get recap to what we were doing. So we saw the first verse. Then we also, after Dhritarashtra, he asked about who are the ones that we are facing in battle. or rather he asked what was the state of affairs at Kurukshetra, where his sons are facing the Pandavas, right? Kima Kuruvata Sanjaya. Here one more thing we have to understand about Dhritarashtra was that he was a person who chose to be blind. It was not that one thing is to be physically blind and the other is to be, known to yourself you are being blind to your own weaknesses. That is being blind or blinding your intellect itself, right? He was a very clever king. He knew the art of warfare also. He had been trained as a Kshatriya. He had been trained to be a king. And he was guided by an able and capable Bhishmaji, right? But yet, rather than being that just administrator, rather than being that just king, he chose to give in to his weaknesses where he need not have, right? And therefore, he gave space for adharma to creep into the kingdom. Not just the kingdom, but the whole state of affairs of Hastinapur, or rather the battle between the Pandavas and Kauravas. If when he was bringing up his sons itself, he had removed that seed of jealousy from his sons, then this, what was happening right now, would not have. But the whole beauty of this Mahabharata is to see the various characters, and they all seem to be very formidable, and yet all have some kind of flaw in their characters. And these flaws we see in ourselves also in many ways. They manifest in ourselves also, and that is the whole message of this Mahabharata also, right? So here, of course, he is very possessive of his sons, right? And therefore he is now anxious and he is asking. So when he is asking, as we told, the 10th day, now it was 11th day when this query had come. And of course, what Sanjay is doing a recap of it, okay? So that we also come to up to date as to what is happening, right? So here, when Sanjay also speaks, we see how he is alert, and he also tries to bring a message to Dhritarashtra. He knows that Dhritarashtra himself is seated on the throne next to him. It is not that Dhritarashtra is somewhere else. Dhritarashtra as king is seated next to him, and yet in that second verse, what does he say? He says that that Acharya upasangamya Raja Vachanam Abravit. So whom is he talking about? Right? So in the second verse he says, Društva tu Pandavanikam Vyudham Duryodhanastada. That's when Duryodhana, assessing the opponents in front of him, he spoke up. And what did he do? He walked up to his Acharya. Who was that Acharya? He was talking of Dronacharya, right? He walked up to Dronacharya and Raja Vachanam Abravit. That Raja here he is referring to is not Dhritarashtra, but he is referring to Duryodhana, because he was walking as though in the feet of or in the shoes of the king. So he was basically hinting at telling Dhritarashtra that even though it seems superficially only that you are king, actually who is king, who is acting as king is your son Duryodhana. So here here is this position of Sanjaya, who is wise and doesn't want to interfere in the affairs, And yet, being someone who is the hitachintaka of the entire Kuru clan, who's the well-wisher of the Kuru clan, is telling as though he is trying to bring the truth in front of the king, the residing king, which is Dhritarashtra. He is telling him that that son of yours, he is the one who is now approaching Dronacharya, right? So, and further, further he goes on to tell what exactly is happening. So, in the verse 3, he says, Pashyetam Panduputranam Acharyam Mahatim Chamum Vyudham Drupada Putrena Tava Shishyena Dhimata. So, here Duryodhana is speaking, of course, and he's saying that, look at the army of our opponents, right? And, and these are led by who? They are led by Drishtadyumna. Drishtadyumna, who is the son of Drupada, and Drishtadyumna is your disciple. And of course, he is warning him that, this person, had you not taught him, he wouldn't be your opponent. So basically here what we are seeing is Duryodhana slowly bringing in his inconfidence. He's though he doesn't want to, there is a lot of fear creeping in. And he knows he has a huge army. He knows he has the best on his side. And who are the best? The best are Bhishma and Drona himself. Right? The two of them are sufficient as though, right? Actually speaking, the two of them are sufficient to face the entire opponent side. But Duryodhana has his own set of doubts. Why? Because his conscience is pricking him. He knows of the past and he can't let go of the past. He knows where he has gone wrong, and he knows that these two people were not really on his side when it really came to it, right? Even though they are backing him, it is more because of their loyalty to the Kuru clan and because of their loyalty to that throne. It is not that they are more on the side of Duryodhana, they are more on the side of the Kuru clan, and therefore they are here at the war. And they are, even though he is a dharmic, he knows that these two people are very much on the side of dharma. Okay, so therefore he is also very fearful. What if something happens and the sides reverse? Even though his team seems to be, huge and big, right? And is loaded with the best of warriors. But what if, these two, who on whose shoulder the whole game rests, what if these two turn shoulder? What then? So here also one more thing we have to keep in mind is, during the war, as the war rules go, before the war begins, the whole set of people who are at war, they have the choice to switch their sides if they so wish, right? So yes, that Duryodhana has this kind of fear and is sweating it out, right, on the battle, assessing the whole two sides of people. That makes sense to some extent, because he knows that as much as they are on his side, there is much more chance that if he does something wrong, they could have gone on the other side as well. Because both of them, they love the Pandavas. And much more he thinks of Bhishma Pitama, who who is as much, in love with his grandsires as the others, as Krishna is. So therefore he is very much fearful as to what that outcome could be. And here he is, and therefore he doesn't even go to Bhishma Pitama. When he wants to voice these fears, he is going to whom? He is going to Dronacharya. So that, Dronacharya at least understands what is happening. Fine. So further he says here, now looking at the others which are there. And then one more thing about Duryodhana to observe as his character is that, he knew what is dharma and he knew what is adharma also. Right? And many times this comes to play also. And there is this favorite one quote from the Mahabharata itself where he says, Janami dharma nacha me pravrittihi, janami adharma nacha me nivrittihi. Kenapi devena hridi stitena yatha niyuktosmi tatha karomi. So first is, what is he saying? That I know what is dharma. Yes, I am aware of dharma as much as you and I can know. But it is not something, it is not my calling. Even though I know what is dharma, it is not something that I would adhere with, because it is definitely not my calling. But he says that, I know that what is adharma, right? And I will walk that path, though I know that it is not going to take me to liberation even. Okay? So he knows, and yet he walks what he's talking, that only he's walking. He's saying that I know what is dharma, I know what is adharma, but I am not the one who is going to walk the path of dharma. I would rather walk this adharma. It's much more my game than anything. So such a person is this Duryodhana, right? So it is not that, suddenly he is going to have a change of heart and say that, oh, let's stop the war. These are my cousins, these are my people. Kya hai? They want 5 villages, let's give them. No, he's very adamant. And that seed of jealousy which had come in as at his childhood itself, and which, in various ways it got provoked as he grew up, it led to him saying that, or rather being insistent that what I say, only that is going to happen. I am never ever going to give anything which belongs to me to these Pandavas. So this insistence is much more, that which led to this Mahabharata, you might say, right? So as such, Duryodhana, we might say, is existing in any of us also, right? Whenever we are insisting on something, right, we know that it is wrong, and yet we give in to it, right? So that is being that Duryodhana only, right? Where we know we shouldn't go, we should be able to stop it right there at thought level. But still what happens? We go with it. We say that, theek hai, what is there? I want to do it my way or the highway, right? So that is what was his pravrutti, right? So, one is to know, or be aware of what is right and wrong, and the other is to still go with our this false pride that we have built. And that also will come to the fore in various ways later also in the 16th chapter again, as we said, when we are saying there is this dambha, darpa, adi, the asuric sampatti which comes in, that we will see manifest in the various characters, right? So in the first chapter alone, you get a picture of which character is how. Later on, these characters might not come. For that, we should read the Mahabharata, right? Anyway, so going on, proceeding with our flow of the verses. So he said in the 4th, 5th and 6th verse, right, as we saw, Duryodhana is further telling us who are the ones who are on the battlefield in the opponent sides. So he says, Atra Shura Maheshvasa Bhimarjuna Samayudhi Yuyudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharatha. So he says, Atra Shura Maheshvasa Bhimarjuna Samayudhi Yuyudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharatha. So there are, there, Atra, here, who are the heroes? There are the big Maheshvasa, there are the big archers. Who are they? There is Bhima, there is Arjuna, and there is, besides these, or rather equal in stature to Bhima and Arjuna are warriors such as Yuyudhana and Virata, and Drupadascha. Drupadascha is, the entire clan, or rather Drupada, who is the opponent of Dronacharya, you might say, or whose son is Drishtadyumna, whose daughter is Draupadi. So all of these. So Yuyudhana is who? Yuyudhana is again one of the greater warriors. He was also a great archer, right? And Virata is one who had given shelter to the Pandavas when they were in exile, right? The year just before, when they are in hiding prior to them coming out in the open, right? That year, it was Virata's kingdom where they had taken shelter. All the Pandavas, including Draupadi, they were hiding, they were doing some kind of work in Virata's kingdom, and he was a mighty king, and he also helped them quite a big deal, and now he was on their side. And then here there is also one thing about Yuyudhana, right? Yuyudhana is one who was always, he was very sincere to dharma. He wouldn't at any time, accept an adharmic act, right? And he had his brother also, who was Vikarna. Vikarna was actually on which side? Vikarna was on the side of the Kauravas. And these two brothers, Vikarna and Yuyudhana, right? Both of them were very dharmic people. They would vouch for dharma. But there was a difference in the two. One of them, which was Vikarna was the only one who stood up in the court when Draupadi was being shamed. When Draupadi was being cruelly handled, it was Vikarna who stood up and spoke. But the flaw in him was that he would speak, but he would still support his friends. And who were his friends? His friend was Duryodhana. So therefore, even when it came to the battle, he stuck to being on the Kaurava side, right? But here, Yuyudhana on the other side was, he would never support any adharmic act, and therefore when the call was given before the war, he chose to switch over to the Pandava side. Okay. Now a similar thing, if we had to look in the Ramayana, right? The same rule applied then too, right? And Ravana's two brothers. One was Kumbhakarna, a very tamasic person, and the other was Vibhishana, right? Vibhishana was more of a sattvic mindset, and he more, of course, stood for dharma also. And when it came to it, he was very much, on the side of Rama. He too, of course, warned Ravana about what he was doing, and he also told him that bringing Sita away in such a manner and then fighting with Rama for that was totally not right, and it would lead to a great deal of destruction. But Ravana, of course, did not listen to him. In fact, he sarcastically reproached him. And of course, Vibhishan then chose to go on the side of Rama and fought the battle. Whereas Kumbhakarna, at the same time, right, he too warned Ravana, and he too tried to tell him of what could be the possible consequences of such a battle. And yet Ravana had not listened to him. But Kumbhakarna, being loyal to Ravana, he decided to be with Ravana itself. He could not come out of his tamasic mindset. He said, okay, I did my job by warning Ravana. Now if I have to also die in the battle, I will die. Right? So such is the play of Sattva and Rajas, and also Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, the gunas, and also our own thinking and wisdom. It is not just knowing the knowledge, but also walking the path which is required. Otherwise, all this is not going to be of any help, right? So here going back to this whole array of warriors and the battalion which they had, he says that these warriors, Yuyudhanu, Virata, Drupada, right, and all others, they are very great Maharathas. And they are, of course, when they are Maharathas, what are they? They are commanding 11,000 such great archers below them, right? Who are the others then on that battlefield? So there he says, Drushtake tushchekitanah Kashirajascha viryavan Purujit kunti bhojascha Shaibhyascha narapungavaha. So then others are there. There is Drishtaketu, there is Chekitanaha, right? And then there is the king of Kashi, right? And this king of Kashi, he was more a tribal chieftain, and who chose to be with the Pandava side, right? Then there is Purujit and Kunti Bhoja. This Purujit and Kunti Bhoja, they were brothers, and it was Kunti Bhoja who had adopted Kunti, and of course Kunti had married Pandu, right? And had the 5 sons who are now called the Pandavas. Then there is Shaibhya, who is the king of Shibi. All of these, they are what? He says they are the best of men. And Duryodhana himself is saying that, they are the best of men. So he knows whom he is facing, right? And then further he says, Yudha manyuscha vikranta uttamaujascha viryavan Saubhadro Dropadeyascha Sarva Eva Maharathaha. So Yudhamanyuscha Vikranta. Yudhamanyu, he is the strong in the battle, right? He is very successful, right? That Vikranta is talking of his prowess, okay? It is not that it is another name, okay? So then Uttamaujascha. Uttamaujah, he is also a very great, brave warrior. Viryavan, he is very brave, Viryavan. Then he says, Sobhadro. Sobhadro is basically Subhadra's son. Who is that? Abhimanyu. It is said that, when Abhimanyu would be on the battlefield, it would be very difficult, for those who knew his father, they would find it difficult to understand whether, is this Arjuna himself or is this his son? Because the style of fighting was similar for both of them. He was very much his father's son, and he was very much courageous and could handle any astra and shastra. So here Shastra, when we say, is weapons which can be held in hand and fought with the opponent. And Astra is that which is hurled or thrown. Okay. And then, here he says that, and of course there was Saubhadra, who is that? That is Abhimanyu, and then there is Draupadeyascha, the sons of Draupadi. So Draupadi had 5 sons of each of the Pandavas, right? So all of them, they were the best of the Maharathas on the Pandavas side. So here now further, while he is looking at all of them and seeing what is the specialty as though of each of them, and he is recounting that to Dronacharya, he's kind of voicing his concern, because he is thinking, oh God, are you seeing what I am seeing? They are like the best of best, and they are in our opposition. So how are we going to face this? Oh Acharya, he's as though he's telling him, and he's rebuking also, and he's telling him that, what is this? But actually inside within, he is very much afraid of what is going to come upon him, because he sees that all of them are able and capable, and he knows that his team is also led by the best, but he also has within him this little bit of scare that what if the ones who are leading me, what if they decide to drop my side? Because he knows how ugly he has been in his approach to them. Even when it comes to his own people, right? He had always been using a harsh kind of tone. Of course, where he wanted to be cool, he would be cool also. But at the same time, when he looked at Yudhishthir, right? Yudhishthir would be, even when he would go and approach his opponents, he would be very respective to them in his approach. He would see them for the goodness in them. He would never try to see, what is the bad in them, but he would try to see the good in them, because he was the one who is always facing or always walking the path of dharma. And when he also spoke with his subordinates, he would give them the kind of respect he would give an equal kind of a person. So he would never look down upon anyone. He would always look highly at them, right? Whereas Duryodhana was not that. It was even said that earlier also Vidur had warned Dhritarashtra of what is going to happen, and he had warned him of the game of dice also, that it should not be played at all, because it might further come down to there being a battle. And Dhritarashtra, scared for what might happen, does try and approach Duryodhana, but Duryodhana just laughs him off, and he says that, I think you have become old. Dad, I can handle it. We are going to win this game of dice, and we are never giving one tiny inch of property to these Pandavas. That was his stand, right? And now he had come to this war scene, right? And he's even his approach to his own teacher was so sad, because here is his teacher who taught him everything. He should have all the respect, because he is the one who is going to fight the battle for him. And yet here he was telling him, pointing out, see, do you see this person, you have taught this person. You see this other person, do you see? This person has this greatness in them. So it was not like Dronacharya was not aware of all this. Dronacharya was leading the forces, and he was well aware of who is capable of what. In fact, Duryodhana's approach to Dronacharya should have been, "Sir, can you guide me? What should I do? How can I support you?" Right? Rather, what is he doing? He's trying to, trying to trigger his anger in some way or the other. So even Dronacharya might have told him that, so what are you trying to do? Are you afraid of them? Then why don't you just go, and pull the white flag and say we'll not go at war. We can have some kind of samjhauta. Then he says, no. It's not so, no. That is not what I was trying to tell. I was only pointing out to you, Look at the great people in front of us. And then he voices his next concern. He says, Asmakam. He says, okay, now let's look at our own side. Look at our side of our warriors who are equally great, and they are many more in number. He says, Asmakam tu vishishtaye tan nibodha dijottama nayaka mama sainyasya sanyartham tan bravimite. So he says, no, also, O best among the twice born. Now that, that Dvijottama, which is said, that means twice born. The best, Dvijottama, the best among the twice born. There he is referring to Dronacharya. Okay, this is the second mistake he makes over here. Okay, we'll talk about it after. Where he says, Nayaka mama sainyasya sanyartham tan bravimite. Yeah, who are the leaders in my army? Let me tell you about them. Right? So first, if you see this verse, first what he says is Asmakam. Asmakam, our army. Now let's look at our army. And he ends with my army, leaders of my army. So every time he is so self-centered, he is always thinking of me. Right? So somewhere he had, slipped off to going and saying, okay, let me correct myself. So when he tries to do that, he starts with, let's look at the lineup of our army. Who are the great ones among them? And then he goes and addresses Dronacharya as Dvijottama. And then further, he closes by that line, that verse by saying, Mama Sainyasya. Nayaka Mama Sainyasya. So he is further saying that this is my army. Basically what he is saying is, this is my army. So here when he is addressing Dronacharya as Dvijottama, you might think that what is wrong in that? Isn't he complimenting Dronacharya? Isn't he saying something good for Dronacharya? But we have to see here what is the position of Dronacharya. One is not only he is the teacher, Acharya of the Kauravas as well as the Pandavas. He has taught them the best, and to teach them the best, he has to be the best. Right? And yet, he is being called Dvijottama. Now, who is a Dvijottama? Twice born. So, one is, the concept is like this, that when we are born, born into this world, right? That is said to be our birth, right? We get a birth certificate, right? Which says that here you are born and this was the date you were born in and this was the place you were born in and these are your parents, whatever, right? So, that just qualifies that I was born, right? And then the second birth that is spoken of as Dvija, right? The second birth is said to be when after having studied or after having gained the right teacher and understood the right values of life after having studied and understood the right values of life towards which I should be walking, right, towards which I have to strive. Then at that point, when I am taking a certain pledge, right, that is said to be my second birth. Okay, that happens only with some, who take to that path, right? So here, if you are calling that, that person who is the general of your army as a person who is, going to sit quietly and only think about the path or the goal of life, who is going to sit peacefully and not going to fight, because by calling him Dvijottama, what Duryodhana is doing is under-qualifying his teacher as the general of that army. He's kind of voicing his doubt or his inconfidence that maybe you are not worth taking this army forward. Will you be able to fight, or will you drop your weapons and say that no, I have to take sannyas, I'm going. So that kind of, maybe there was this digging doubt inside of his mind, and that has come to the fore when he has let this word slip, and maybe he realizes it also. So in the next verse also he kind of corrects it, right? So here he says, in the 7th verse, he says, let me tell you who are the ones who are leaders in my army. So in the next verse he says Bhavan. So here Bhavan as in Dronacharya. Okay. So earlier he called him Dvijottama, now which means a Brahmin, the best among Brahmin, right? And now he is calling him, he is saying you are one of the best leaders. Who are the ones? Because in the previous verse he says Nayaka mama sainyasya sanyartam tan bravimite. So he says Nayaka, who are the leaders? Let me tell you, who are the ones who are going to lead my army to victory. So here he says Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha Krupascha Samitinjayah Ashwathama Vikarnascha Somadattis Tathaivacha. So he says Bhavan, you, O Dronacharya. And then he should have said, first he should have said who's the chief of army, which is Bhishma Pitama. But he doesn't take Bhishma Pitama's name, because now he knows he went wrong in the previous dialogue. So he says, he decides to say Bhavan, oh great, Dronacharya, you yourself. Bhishma Pitama, who's our commander-in-chief. Then next is Karna. He knows that Karna will never ever leave his side, and he knows that the Pandavas also are fearful of Karna as a great warrior, right? So he says Karnascha, and then he talks of Krupascha. Krupa is who? Krupa is Krupacharya. And Krupacharya is also he's also related to Dronacharya himself, and he was also the teacher of the Kauravas. So here he is very confident. Duryodhana is very confident of Krupacharya there, right? And then he says that these are, of course, they are going to lead us victoriously in this war. Then who else is there? Then he, again, as if to, increase his praise of Dronacharya, he brings up the name of Ashwathama. Ashwathama is who? Again, son of Dronacharya, right? So he says Ashwathama Vikarnascha. So Vikarna we spoke of earlier as the one who stood by dharma, but when it came to actually stand by dharma, he was on the side of adharma, which is Duryodhana. So, but then Duryodhana taking his name means that Duryodhana counts on his support. Vikarnascha Somadattis Tathaivacha. So also there is, so when he says there is Somadatta, right? So that is another name. So there is Bhurishrava. Bhurishrava is who? He is the son of Somadatta. So therefore here it is Somadatista. So who is Somadatti? He is one of the mighty kings, and his son is this Bhurishrava. Okay. So when they are saying Somadatti, it is actually referring to Bhurishrava. Okay. Then he says, then Dronacharya says, okay, is that enough? Then he says, no, there are many more. There are many more who are side on the Kaurava side. So it's as though, as he's counting, his confidence is growing, So Duryodhana says, Anye cha bahava shuraha madarte tyakta jivitaha nana shastra praharnaha sarve yuddha visharadaha. So he says there are many more. Anye cha bahava shuraha. And there are many more, who are courageous one. And then he further says something which, shows that he has a lot of confidence, right? Because he says that Madarte Tyakta Jivita, all these courageous fellows who are there, they are willing to, give up their lives for my sake. He's not talking, so he is definitely saying that this is my war, this is my army, there are enough of capable people and they have all come for my sake. Madarthe tyakta jivitaha. So slowly, earlier where he had so many doubts, now he is coming, his confidence is growing looking at them. Then he says, not just that they are there, but they have we have a lot of equipment. We have various weapons. Nana shastra praharnaha. Sarve yuddha visharadaha. And not just that, they are not just that we have a lot of resources, but all of these who are lined up here, they are able and capable to handle all these weapons also. They are very experienced in this battle, and they have proven themselves in various ways, right? And then further comes as though a doubt on his side, or it might also be that he's expressing his confidence. This 10th verse is a kind of a you might say it is saying, it is raising a doubt, or sometimes it is also as though speaking of his confidence. So in this 10th verse he says, aparyaptam tadasmakam balam bhishma bhirakshitam paryaptam tvidamete sham balam bhima bhirakshitam. So he says in the first line, he says aparyaptam tadasmakam balam bhishma bhirakshitam. So this, when we are looking at this word paryaptam and this aparyaptam, right? So when we say aparyaptam, it could mean insufficient, if we are taking paryaptam as sufficient, it is enough, right? Sufficient, paryaptam. But if we take this aparyaptam to mean limited, then it will change the whole meaning of the verse, right? So he says, in the one perspective of looking at it is aparyaptam tadasmakam balam bhishma bhirakshitam. This whole army of ours, tad asmakam, ours, right? It is led by the strength of Bhima. It is led by the strength of Bhishma, because it is our army, and who is the one who is leading it? Who is the commander in chief? It is Bhishma. And having him as as the one who is leading us, that itself is sufficient. Why? Because his potential is it is not limited, it is unlimited. His potential is unlimited, and therefore having him in our leadership is sufficient for us. And that led by, the one which is led by Bhima, by Bhima, the Pandava's army, right? Because Bhima is not very steady-minded. This Bhima is very fickle-minded. Suddenly he will get angry and he will go and, hit someone. It might be on their side also. So, he is a very fickle-minded person. You cannot at all rely on him. Whereas, look at Bhishma. Bhishma has stood the strength of time. Not just that, he is the one who can, at his call, decide whether he wants to live or die. And he is most well equipped of all warriors present here. So, if you look at this whole army of us led by him, no one can provoke him in such a way that he will lose this battle for us. Whereas when we look at Bhima's anger can be risen just like that. We can say something to him that will make him totally emotional, and he can make the Pandavas lose at any time. So Bhima is ill-equipped, and therefore his army or his team is not going to be a winning team. It is limited. This is what he is trying to say. Who is trying to say? Duryodhana. This is one perspective, right? That Bhishma is, he has unlimited strength, and therefore he is sufficient for us. Whereas Bhima, in comparison, is a limited kind of person, and therefore their army is insufficient. Okay. Another way of looking at it is Duryodhana voicing his inner voice, which is at all times pointing, nibbling at him, because he knows that I have taken away dharma. I am actually on the side of adharma, right? Therefore, we don't know when things might change. So it could be that our team, which is led by Bhishma, is limited, is insufficient, is aparyaptam. Whereas though Bhima is limited, their team is led, full of such great people, is unlimited. It can win. It is sufficient for them to win that war, even though Bhima is limited. Whereas even though we have the unlimited strength of Bhishma, our team is insufficient. Okay, so that is this two perspectives basically. I hope it is clear. I have not confused in any way. So it is aparyaptam tad asmakam balam bhishma bhirakshitam paryaptam twidam etesham, the one which is in the opposite side, right? Which is led by Bhima. Balam bhima bhirakshitam. So the one on their side, it is insufficient because it is led by the limited Bhima, whereas ours is led by that unlimited strength of Bhishma, therefore it is sufficient. Or on the other side also it could be that even though we have Bhishma's unlimited power, we are insufficient because this Bhishma could turn sides, and therefore even though Bhima is limited, they are the ones who could have a gain, right? Further he says, ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagam avasthitaha bhishma eva bhirakshantu bhavantas sarva eva hi. Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagam avasthitaha bhishmam eva bhirakshantu eva bhishmam eva abhirakshantu bhavantas sarva eva hi. Therefore, so he says, So this is what we have, right? And these are what your opponents are, right? And you have to know one thing though, that Bhishma is, he has unlimited strength, and he's the one who is controlling our army. So what then, therefore, he is paryapta, he is by himself, he is able and capable to take us forward. But what do you all have to do? You all have to make sure that you support him in the right way. You have to make sure that you are in sync with what he is directing us to do. Okay? Because there are chances, people on our opposite side know what is Bhishma's weakness. What is Bhishma's weakness? Bhishma's weakness is that if a woman comes in front of him, he will not fight. Right? And here, who is that which is a woman? Is that Shikhandi. So, who is Shikhandi? I think we have short past our time. So, Shikhandi's story we'll take up in the next session. But basically what, Duryodhana is saying is that let's weigh our odds and, our pros and cons. And being fully aware, let's give the proper support to Bhishma. So not only is he telling this to Dronacharya, he is also telling it to his entire clan over there, that Bhishma is sufficient for us. He has the power to, not die even, right? And therefore, it was not that, he chose to die at that moment when he was shot down. He just chose to lie down. And later only he chose to go on the day that he wanted to go, right? Which was at the time of Uttarayan. Anyway, so here now Duryodhana has kind of come to grips with the situation, and therefore, he's assessing what else is there, right? And now that, he also realized that even though he was trying to, get some sympathy as though from Dronacharya, and even Dronacharya did not give him that kind of empathy or sympathy. He remained silent throughout his outburst, right? And therefore that triggered him more to call him Dvijottama. And then, and then he also understood that he had kind of slipped there, and shown his ego more. So then in the next verses he goes on to say, oh Bhavan, oh Dronacharya, you are the one who is our hero. Next there is Bhishma, then there is Karna, then there is Krupa, then is Ashwatthama. So like this he tries to build up, in praise to Dronacharya. But he knows nothing is going to happen. But as he is doing, he realizes what is his strengths over here, and he says, fine, chalo, we are ready to go to battle. And then we proceed with that. So I will stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Hari Om. Thank you.